Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are going deep into your stack of sources to give you that high-speed path to understanding.
And today we have something really interesting, a bit of a time travel mission.
It really is. We're going back to the late 2010s to look at the work of a college student, a tech enthusiast we're just going to call Bill.
And he wrote these two research papers, one in 2017 on the dangers of AI, and another one in 2019 on the harms of social media.
Right. And what's fascinating is that this is a snapshot of the world right before, well, before everything changed.
Exactly, before large language models were on the front page of every newspaper, and definitely before these massive regulatory fines started coming down.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty simple. We're going to compare Bill's theoretical fears from back then with the hard reality of 2025 and 2026.
The question really is, was Bill right?
Did he see it coming? Did he pinpoint the seeds of the crises we're all trying to navigate right now?
And it's important to remember his papers weren't just about, what was happening that week. They were about the structural risks, the exponential growth.
He was citing people like Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk.
Ray Kurzweil, yeah. And our job is to connect those early warnings to today's outcomes, whether that's a technical breakthrough like DeepSeek or a massive class action lawsuit against Meta.
Okay, let's unpack this, and we have to start with his first paper from December 2017. It's called Why Judgment Day Might Not Be Just an Imaginary Concept in a Science Fiction Movie.
A bit of a mouthful, but it gets to the point.
It does. His thesis on AI was, well, it was ambitious. He went right for the biggest fear of all, recursive self-improvement.
The idea that an AI could start improving its own code.
Exactly. Leading to what he called superintelligence. He's citing John Spacey here, laying out that fear that this new intelligence would just rapidly blow past human intellect and, crucially, might not align with our values.
And you have to put yourself back in 2017. I mean, this was before the whole GPT explosion. The idea of a machine just waking up felt very, very sci-fi.
It did, but Bill showed it wasn't just a hypothetical. He pointed out that this was a serious, organized concern for policymakers.
Which is a key piece of evidence.
Absolutely. He brought up the 2016 National Artificial Intelligence Strategic Plan from the U.S. government. That document, a government document, explicitly talks about the need to address safety and ethics.
And it mentions recursive self-improvement by name.
By name. So that moves it right out of the movies and into a documented national strategic risk.
And Bill didn't stop there. He reinforced this idea of just how fast things were moving by citing the predictions for the technological singularity.
That tipping point, right, where machine intelligence just takes off.
Yeah. He noted that futurists, like Ray Kurzweil at Google, had already updated the timeline. They moved it from 2045 all the way up to 2029.
And this was back in 2017.
Right. So that confirmed Bill's central worry. The acceleration was already happening. It felt unstoppable.
So let's fast forward to today, to 2026. We don't have Terminators walking around.
Not yet, anyway.
But the evolution of AI agents themselves has been, well, it's been dramatic.
Yeah.
And it seems to validate Bill's concern, but in a slightly different way.
It does. Today, experts at IBM are talking about the rise of so-called super agents.
And what does that mean exactly? A super agent.
Well, the key shift is that the big models, your ChatGPTs, your Claudes, your Geminis, they're not just chatbots anymore. They're becoming orchestrators.
Orchestrators.
They combine reasoning, planning, using tools. The expert in that IBM source actually says they are evolving themselves into these super agents. They're all fighting to be the main front door to your digital life.
And this connects directly back to the technical framework Bill was using in his paper.
It really does. He was referencing the 4 types of AI, from Rouse and Laskowski. Back then, we really only had type 1, which is reactive, and very basic type 2 limited memory AI.
And the other two, type 3 and 4, theory of mind and self-awareness?
Pure science fiction. But the kind of complex planning and reasoning we're seeing in these super agents now, it's pushing type 2 right up to the edge of what you might call type 3.
Much faster than even he probably thought it would happen.
Even with his concerns about acceleration, yeah.
But, okay, wasn't the fear of rapid growth kind of common knowledge back then? I mean, what made Bill's paper stand out from just, general tech anxiety?
I think it was that he identified the structural limits, the things that would have to be solved for that growth to continue. And that's what brings us to the most incredible validation of his fears. The fact that current breakthroughs are just systematically knocking down those old limits one by one.
So let's focus on this DeepSeek finding. It's called Manifold Constrained Hyperconnections, or MHC. It's a very technical name. Why does that specific breakthrough validate Bill's fears so strongly?
Because it's a game changer. It solved a really fundamental problem in the architecture of these networks that's been around for over a decade.
Okay, so break it down for us.
So think of a deep neural network, like a massive, complex highway. For a long time, to stop the whole thing from basically crashing during training, a problem called vanishing gradients, engineers put in something called residual connections.
Like guardrails on the highway.
Exactly like guardrails. They made the process stable, but they also created a huge traffic jam, a really narrow bottleneck for all the information.
And MHC fixed that bottleneck.
It blew it wide open. The AI Revolution source explains how they figured out how to mathematically widen that highway, that's the hyperconnection, and just flood it with more data without losing any of that stability.
And the numbers that came out of this they're pretty mind-bending.
They are. You're talking about a 400% increase in internal data flow capacity, 400%, and it only added about 6.7% to the training time.
That is an insane level of efficiency.
It's the kind of efficiency Bill was afraid of. And the impact was seen specifically in high-level reasoning. Their 27 billion parameter model made huge leaps on logical reasoning benchmarks.
So Bill's prediction was that the tech would just find ways to get smarter, faster than we could regulate or prepare for. And things like MHC are proving him right on the fundamental rate of growth.
Exactly. The limits that seemed baked into the system are just being engineered away, one after another. That accelerated timeline he cited, it's looking more and more plausible.
Okay, so that brings us to his second paper. This is 2 years later, December 2019, and it's all about social media. It feels like a big shift from this existential AI threat to, everyday societal problems.
It seems like a shift, but you're right. The theme is the same. It's about powerful technologies driven by incentives that just don't align with societal good.
The paper was called Social Media and Its Potential to Cause More Harm Than Good. He broke the harm down into 3 main areas.
He did. He started with the more obvious ones. First, societal interaction. He cited studies showing how platforms amplify negative content and lead to less face-to-face communication.
Then he moved on to self-image and mental health. He was citing a 2016 study that linked social media use to rising depression, plus the clear dangers of cyberbullying.
But it was his third point, the one he called the greatest threat. That was just incredibly prescient.
Data, money, and influence.
That's the one. His argument was simple. Because the platforms are free, you, the user, are the product, and this relentless collection of your data, your age, your interests, everything is sold to shape your worldview through ads and influence campaigns.
And his big proof point for this was the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which was still fresh in everyone's mind.
Right. And he even cited Andrew Yang, who was running for president at the time, calling for a WTO for data. The alarm bells were already going off.
So if we look at where we are now, the legal and financial validation of that thesis, it's just irrefutable, isn't it?
It is. We've gone from talking about theoretical harm to seeing massive real-world financial consequences.
I mean, just think about this number. $725 million.
The Meta settlement.
Right. The NBC Chicago report confirmed that money is now actually being paid out from that class action lawsuit. And it was all because Facebook was making user data available to third parties without consent.
It's a direct validation of Bill's whole data as product argument. The size of that settlement just proves the foundation he was worried about wasn't just unethical, it was a financial catastrophe waiting to happen.
But it goes deeper than that, right?
Yeah.
The reliance on that data also made the whole business model incredibly fragile.
That's the other side of the coin, because when an outside force finally stepped in, the whole model just started to crumble.
You're talking about Apple's privacy changes.
I am. The Class Action Daily video covers this shareholder lawsuit against Meta. It alleged that as soon as Apple restricted user tracking on iOS, ad spending just fell off a cliff.
Because their core product, that hyper-targeted advertising Bill described, just stopped working as well.
It became ineffective, and the company, according to the lawsuit, had no real backup plan. They were completely reliant on that one very fragile data pipeline.
So he nailed not just the data collection, but the fundamental weakness of the trillion-dollar industry built on top of it.
It's pretty remarkable.
Now let's talk about the societal harms he mentioned, because that's where we've seen maybe the most extreme government responses.
This is the youth protection argument, and you just have to look at Australia.
What they did was sweeping.
It was. A nationwide law that bans anyone under 16 from the big platforms, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube.
And the government's official reasoning for doing this, It reads like a summary of Bill's paper.
It really does. Protection from cyberbullying, body image issues, addictive algorithms. They saw the mental health crisis he was describing, and their solution was to just remove an entire generation from the ecosystem.
Bill's third point, though, was maybe the most nuanced. It was about this blurring line between what you can't say legally and what you shouldn't say morally.
And how hard it is for AI moderation to tell the difference.
Exactly. And that need for moderation at scale has led directly to what some are now calling Europe's free speech crisis.
The Politico report on this is pretty sobering. In the UK, you have over 30 people arrested every day
That's 12,000 people a year.
for online communications that are just deemed offensive or menacing. It's an incredibly wide net.
But the extreme case is Germany, isn't it?
It is. Their NetzDG law threatened platforms with these enormous fines, up to 50 million euros, if they didn't take down illegal content fast.
So the platforms, to protect themselves financially, just started over-policing everything.
Massively. A study in 2024 found that something like 99.7% of the comments that Facebook deleted in response to this law were actually legally permissible speech.
Wow. So in an effort to moderate, they ended up creating this massive censorship machine.
The unintended consequences of the problem Bill identified have just been huge for free expression.
So let's bring this all home. The final verdict. Was Bill right?
I think we have to say yes.
On AI, he nailed the big existential threats, the recursive self-improvement, the singularity. And he correctly saw that the technology would advance faster than our ability to control it, which we're seeing with breakthroughs like MHC.
And on social media, I mean, he was almost perfectly prescient. He saw the data monetization model as the core threat, and he predicted the exact societal harms, mental health, cyberbullying that led to these huge lawsuits and government bans.
So what's the big insight here? What can we learn from looking back at these papers today?
I think the final assessment is that Bill was right because he wasn't just looking at the tech itself. He identified the fundamental structural incentives driving everything.
The why.
The why. For AI, the incentive is always towards more scale, more power, more autonomy. For social media, the incentive was data-driven profit, and he correctly saw that that incentive would always override ethical concerns.
His work is kind of a case study in thinking critically about emerging tech.
It is. It proves that a lot of what we call a crisis today was actually a predictable structural risk years ago.
That is powerful. And it makes you wonder what we're overlooking right now.
Well, exactly. If today's biggest AI breakthroughs, like DeepSeek's MHC, are coming from questioning and breaking these old locked-in assumptions, like the residual connection.
And what's next?
Right. What other problems or limits in tech do we all just assume are solved today that are actually the next weak point, the thing that's going to lead to the next wave of instability in, say, 2029 or 2030?
Very heavy thought to mull over. Thank you for diving deep.